Captain Cole pressed his hand against the cold glass of the observation window. The alien ship hung in space like a massive crystal, turning slowly in the starlight. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest tight. For 3 days, that ship had floated near the human colony station, silent and still. No weapons had fired. No demands had been sent. Just silence, which was somehow worse than any threat. Was a military man. He had fought in 3 wars across human space colonies. He had survived a ship explosion, a planetary crash, and a mutiny on a deep space vessel. He knew how to handle weapons and tactics and aggressive enemies. But this silence, this strange and perfect silence, troubled him more than anything else. The radio crackled. It was Commander Williams from the station below. "Captain Cole, we are receiving a message from the alien vessel. They are requesting a single human diplomat to board their ship for direct talks. They are offering a temporary peace protocol if we agree." Turned away from the window. "Have they given a time limit?" 72 hours, Williams replied. "After that, they want to begin negotiations with whoever we send. They have made it clear that this is not a request." Knew what this meant. Someone had to go onto that ship. Someone had to sit across from an alien intelligence and try to make peace or at least buy more time. The risk was enormous. The alien vessel could lock the airlock and trap whoever went inside. They could study humans for weapons development. They could start a war from within. But what choice did anyone have? "I will go," said simply. There was a pause on the line. "Captain, that is not necessary. We can send a diplomatic specialist, someone trained in first contact negotiations." Shook his head even though Williams could not see him. The aliens asked for a human. They did not ask for a specialist or a politician. They asked for a human representative. "That is what I am trained to be. I am going." 2 hours later, stood in the airlock of his small shuttle. His suit was secured, his helmet was sealed, and his communication device was set to broadcast directly to the station. He had written a message to his sister, who worked at the Mars colony. The message said simply that he loved her, and that if things went wrong, she should remember him as someone who tried to make peace. The shuttle detached from the station and moved toward the crystal ship. As got closer, he could see that the vessel was even larger than his instruments had suggested. It was at least 2 kilometers long, with towers and structures that seemed to grow from it like a living thing. The surface shimmered with colors that shifted between blue and purple and green. A docking port opened on the side of the ship, guided his shuttle through it smoothly. The airlock cycled and he heard the hiss of atmosphere mixing. The door slid open. What saw took his breath away. The chamber was vast. The ceiling stretched up at least 50 meters above his head. The walls were made of the same crystal material as the outside of the ship, but here it was more transparent. Could see through the walls to the space beyond, and to the systems that ran through the ship like a living organism. The walls glowed with soft light, creating an environment that felt more like stepping into a dream than onto an alien vessel. And standing in the center of the chamber was a figure that froze in place. She was tall. Not human tall, but truly tall, nearly 8 feet in height. Her body was built in a way that seemed both similar to human form and completely alien at the same time. She had 2 arms and 2 legs, but they moved with a fluidity that no human skeleton could achieve. Her skin rippled with colors. Not painted colors, but colors that moved under her skin like light itself was moving through her body. The colors shifted from deep purple to bright blue, to shades of green that had no names for. But her eyes were what truly captured his attention. They were enormous. They were shaped like an insect's eyes, multifaceted and reflecting light in a way that seemed to show infinite depth. Yet they held intelligence. Not animal intelligence, but the clear, focused intelligence of a being who understood mathematics and language and philosophy. Those eyes looked at with something that might have been curiosity. Around the tall figure, other beings moved in perfect silence. They were smaller, clearly servants or attendants, moving with precision and purpose. They wore nothing that could identify as clothing. Their bodies were adorned with what appeared to be living crystal that grew from their skin. The tall figure spoke. Her voice was strange. It did not come from her mouth in the way human voices did. Instead, it seemed to come from everywhere at once, as if the air itself was carrying the words. Yet the words were clear, perfectly understandable, spoken in English with an accent that could not place. "Welcome, human," she said. "I am Princess Lyra of the Empire. You carry the authority to speak for your people." Forced himself to move. He felt stiff, mechanical, as if his body was not entirely connected to his brain. He removed his helmet slowly, making each movement deliberate and peaceful. The air around him felt cool and clean. There was no poison, no strange smell, just ordinary air that humans could breathe. "I am Captain Cole," he said. His voice sounded small in the vast chamber. "I represent humanity and the colonial government. We come to this meeting in peace." The princess moved closer. Her movement was not a walk but something more like flowing. Her colors shifted as she approached, becoming brighter, more vibrant. Realized that he was not afraid. He should have been afraid. Every survival instinct in his body should have told him to run, to seal his helmet, to retreat to his shuttle. But instead, he felt something different. He felt that this being in front of him had no intention of harming him. Princess Lyra stopped just a few meters away. From this distance, could see details he had not noticed before. There were patterns on her skin, like tattoos, but they seemed to shift and change as her colors shifted. There was an elegance to her, a sense of power held carefully in check. "Tell me, Captain Cole," Lyra said, and her voice carried a note that could only identify as uncertainty. "In all the knowledge your people have gathered about my species, in all the information you have collected and analyzed, have you encountered anything like me?" Considered lying. Diplomacy suggested that he should respond carefully, should measure his words, should say nothing that could be twisted into a weakness or an advantage for the aliens. But something about the way Lyra asked the question made him believe that she wanted truth. "No," said simply. "Honestly, no, I have never encountered anything like you." The effect on Lyra was immediate. Her colors brightened dramatically. The patterns on her skin began to glow. Realized that what he was seeing was an emotional response, the alien equivalent of a smile or a tear or any human expression of feeling. "You did not hesitate," Lyra said. "You did not attempt to flatter or to deceive. You simply spoke what you felt." She moved even closer now, so close that could see the fine details of her enormous eyes. "This is good. This is the beginning of something." "The beginning of what?" asked. "Understanding," Lyra replied. "My people have studied humanity from a distance for a very long time. We have watched your wars and your peace. We have seen your capacity for cruelty and your capacity for kindness. We have asked ourselves many times if you are a species worth the effort of real communication." She tilted her head, a gesture that seemed designed to examine him from a different angle. "I came to this meeting wondering the same thing, but your honesty has answered that question for me." Felt something shift in the space between them. It was not physical. It was something else, something that existed in the way they looked at one another and the way the words passed between them. "My father, the Emperor of the Empire, sent me here to negotiate," Lyra continued. "But I think something more important might happen in this place, in this moment, between you and me. I think the future of our peoples might depend on what happens next." Took a breath. "Then let us make it a good future," he said, had lost track of time. He did not know if he had been aboard the alien ship for 6 hours or 16 hours. The chamber where he and Lyra spoke had no windows except those crystal walls that looked out into space. The light never changed. It remained the same soft blue glow that made everything feel like it was happening outside of normal reality. They had talked about everything. Lyra had shown him recordings of her home world. It was a planet that orbited a blue star, and its surface was covered with crystal formations that reached miles into the sky. Cities had been built not on top of the planet but integrated into it, the crystal growing around the structures as if the planet itself was alive and willing to shelter her people. Had described Earth to her. He talked about the oceans and the mountains, about the cities that his people had built, about the wars that had destroyed much and the peace that had followed some of those wars. "Your world sounds beautiful and terrible," Lyra had said. "It is both," had agreed. "Most things worth having are both." Now they stood in a corridor that was lined with what appeared to be windows into the interior workings of the ship. Through the transparent walls, could see mechanisms that he did not understand, systems that pulsed with light and seemed to move with purpose. "My people have not had a true conflict in over 3,000 years, Lyra said as they walked. "We achieved a level of technology and society that removed the need for most struggle. We built wonders. We created art and music and beauty that lasted for centuries. But sometimes, I wonder if we have become too safe, if we have become people who observe rather than participate." Listened carefully. Lyra was telling him something important, something about her motivations and her desires. "Is that why you wanted to meet me? Because I represent something your people have lost?" Lyra's colors shifted thoughtfully. "Perhaps. When my father told me that a species on a primitive world had successfully launched spacecraft and reached into space, I was intrigued. When we learned that humans had experienced multiple wars, that you had nearly destroyed your own civilization and survived, I became more than intrigued. I became genuinely curious about a species so willing to risk everything for what they believe." They reached a chamber that was smaller than the one where they had first met. There were surfaces that might have been chairs or benches, though they were shaped in ways that suggested they could adjust to whatever body they needed to support. The walls here were more opaque, showing images instead of machinery. The images displayed human cities, human artwork, human history. "I have been studying your culture since I was young," Lyra said. "I read your poetry. I listened to your music. I attempted to understand what drives a being like you to create such things. In your art, I see a quality that my people have not produced in centuries." "What quality is that?" asked. "Desperation," Lyra replied. "Not desperation born of need or pain, but desperation born of trying to express something that cannot be expressed, a need to communicate something beyond words. My people achieved peace and safety, and our art became comfortable. But your art, even in safety, still carries that edge of something desperately trying to be understood." Sat down on one of the chair-like surfaces. It adjusted to support him in a way that was surprisingly comfortable. "My people would probably not describe themselves as desperate. We would say we are trying to find meaning." "Is there a difference?" Lyra asked, sitting across from him in a way that made realize her body could fold and move in directions that human bodies could not. "Maybe not," admitted. Lyra leaned forward. The patterns on her skin began to glow more brightly. "Captain Cole, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to answer with the same honesty you showed me when we first met." Nodded. He understood that something significant was about to be said. "My father expects me to use this meeting to learn your vulnerabilities," Lyra said quietly. "He expects me to gather information about human weapons, human tactics, human weaknesses. He believes that understanding how to defeat an enemy is the first step toward negotiation. But I cannot do that to you. Not after our conversation. Not after I have looked into your eyes and seen a being who is trying to be truthful in a way that my people have forgotten how to be." Felt the weight of what she was saying. "You are going against your father's direct orders." "Yes," Lyra said simply. "I am going against the Emperor of the Empire because I believe he is wrong about your people. I believe he is wrong about what will create peace between us. And I believe that you are more than just a representative of humanity. You are an individual, and that matters." Understood that this was a moment that would define what happened next. If he reported this conversation, if he told the human authorities that Lyra was refusing to follow her emperor's commands, it could be used as leverage. It could give humanity an advantage in negotiations, but it would also betray the trust that Lyra had just placed in him. "Your father is right to be cautious," said carefully. "My people are capable of great harm. We have harmed one another throughout our history. We would certainly harm an enemy if we believed it was necessary for survival." "I know," Lyra replied, "but you are saying this to warn me, not to threaten me. You could have remained silent. You could have allowed me to continue without understanding the danger, but you chose to tell me the truth." Stood up and moved closer to her. "What do you want to happen, Lyra, between your people and mine?" "Peace," she said without hesitation, "but not the peace that comes from fear or dominance. The kind of peace that comes from understanding, from seeing another being and recognizing their value not because they are useful or less dangerous, but because they are themselves, individual, thinking, feeling, real." Extended his hand in the gesture that humans used to show peaceful intention. "Then that is what we will work toward." Lyra looked at his hand carefully. She had seen humans before, she said, but only in recordings and at a distance. She reached out slowly and placed her elongated fingers against his palm. Her skin was warm and smooth, and beneath it could feel the pulse of her heartbeat or whatever the equivalent was. "I have made a decision," Lyra said quietly. "When my father learns that I have broken his orders, he will be angry, but I believe that the anger will pass when he understands what I have learned. I believe that you, Captain Cole, can help me convince him that peace is not a weakness but the greatest strength either of our peoples could achieve." Squeezed her hand gently. "I will help you however I can." Lyra's colors brightened to the most intense brightness had seen yet. He realized that this was the color of joy, of hope, of genuine happiness. "Then we will change the future together," she said. "Not as enemies, but as the beginning of something the galaxy has never seen before." The chamber where the Emperor sat was nothing like the rest of the ship. It was not beautiful. It was designed to project power and dominance. The walls were dark and smooth, with no transparency to them. The floor seemed to be made of a material that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. The throne itself was enormous, raised high above the ground so that whoever sat in it would be looking down at anyone standing before them. Emperor sat in that throne, and he looked at Cole the way a predator looks at prey. Lyra stood beside, her colors now muted and dark, showing what understood to be fear or anxiety or some combination of both. The guards who lined the walls were different from the attendants who had served them before. These were soldiers. They were larger than the other had seen, their bodies more angular and severe. They wore armor that gleamed with a dull light, and they carried weapons that could not identify but clearly could destroy things with great efficiency. Emperor descended from his throne. As he got closer, could see the differences between him and his daughter. Where Lyra was elegant and flowing, the Emperor was hard and angular. His skin was darker, colors more muted, patterns more severe. He was at least 9 feet tall, and his presence seemed to take up all the space in the chamber. "So," the Emperor said, his voice like grinding stone, "my daughter has brought a human barbarian aboard our vessel without permission. She has broken protocol, ignored my direct orders, and spent the last 18 hours in secret communication with an alien species." He stopped in front of, looking down at him with eyes that held no warmth. "Tell me, Captain Cole, why should I not view this as an act of treason? Why should I not view this as an attempt to spy on our systems and our capabilities?" Had faced hostile opponents before. He had been interrogated by human soldiers who wanted information he did not want to give. He had stared down humans who wanted him dead. But those were situations where he could fight back or use weapons or return hostility with hostility. Here, he was utterly defenseless. He was alone on an alien vessel surrounded by soldiers who could kill him with a gesture. He decided that fear would not help him. Anger would not help him. The only thing that might help him was truth. "With respect, Emperor," said clearly, "your daughter did not break protocol because she is disloyal to you. She broke protocol because she is more loyal to the future than to tradition. She understood that true communication between our peoples required more than formal exchanges. She understood that I needed to see her as she truly is, and she needed to see me as I truly am. She was right. And in those 18 hours, we have learned more about one another than weeks of formal negotiation could have taught us. The Emperor's expression did not change. Brave words from someone standing completely alone and surrounded by my power. But bravery without wisdom is merely foolishness, and I see no wisdom in your position. The Emperor moved closer. His fingers were extended and could see that they were capable of incredible damage. My daughter claims that you possess a quality rare among humans. She claims that you are capable of genuine honesty, of speaking truth even when it would be more beneficial to you to lie. Is this true? Did not flinch, he did not step back. Yes, I try to be honest. Then answer me honestly, the Emperor said. He paused, and the weight of his attention felt like physical pressure. Knowing that my species could destroy yours with minimal effort, knowing that my vessels could scour your colonies from existence in a matter of days, knowing that my technology surpasses your own by centuries, do you still believe that peace between our peoples is possible? Or do you simply fear us too much to speak the truth? This was the moment. This was the question that would determine everything. Understood this with absolute clarity. If he answered wrong, if the Emperor believed that he was lying or that he was being controlled by fear, then there would be no negotiation. There would be no future to discuss. Took a breath. He thought about his sister on Mars. He thought about the colonists on Jupiter's moons. He thought about every human being alive, depending on the words he was about to speak. Yes, Emperor, I still believe that peace is possible, said. But I am going to tell you why, and my reason is not the one you expect. The Emperor's expression shifted slightly. Surprise, curiosity, it was difficult to read. Continued. I believe peace is possible because I believe that any species capable of creating what you have created, any species that has survived for thousands of years and chosen not to destroy itself, any species that has produced a daughter like Lyra, must possess the wisdom to recognize that peace is worth achieving. I believe that you have strength enough that you do not need to prove it through conquest. I believe that real strength, the deepest kind of strength, comes from the ability to choose mercy when you could choose dominance. The Emperor was silent for a long moment, could see the colors beneath his skin shifting, flickering with what might have been emotion. You are saying that humans, despite being inferior in every measurable way, believe themselves worthy of alliance with my people, said slowly. No, sir, replied. I am saying that humanity has qualities that might not be measurable by your standards, but they are valuable. We survive because we are adaptable. We create because we are desperate. We bond together because we are vulnerable. We dream of peace because we have experienced war. And we believe in honesty because lies have nearly destroyed us more than once. Lyra made a small sound, something between a gasp and a prayer. Her colors brightened slightly. The Emperor turned to look at his daughter, then back too. You have spent less than a day in communication with my people, in contact with technology and science that you cannot understand, in the presence of power you cannot match. Yet you stand before me without fear, without submission, without the calculation of someone trying to gain advantage. You stand as if you believe that my judgment might actually be worth convincing. I do believe that, said simply. The Emperor suddenly laughed. The sound was strange, not like human laughter but unmistakably the expression of something that resembled humor. Honest indeed, said. Honest enough to compliment my power while maintaining your own dignity. Honest enough to speak of human weakness while claiming human value. Honest enough to tell me things I did not want to hear. Perhaps my daughter is not entirely mistaken about your species. He extended his hand in the human gesture of peace. Lyra's colors exploded into brilliant brightness, and understood that she had been terrified that her father would refuse. "We will continue these discussions," Emperor said formally, "not as a superior meeting with an inferior, but as two species that have much to learn from one another. You have proven yourself worthy of my attention, Captain Cole. Now prove yourself worthy of my trust." Reached out and clasped the Emperor's hand. The grip was firm, controlled, and carried the weight of a promise that neither of them would break. The negotiations took place in a new chamber, one that had been chosen as neutral ground. It was neither the dark formal space where the Emperor sat in judgment, nor the warm spaces where Lyra and had talked about art and philosophy. It was a space designed for business, with tables and display screens and materials that could be written on and shared. On one side of the table sat the delegation. The Emperor himself had chosen to attend, which understood as a sign of significant respect. Lyra sat beside her father, and several military advisors and government officials flanked them. On the other side sat representatives from the human colony government transmitted through the communication system, and a senior military officer named Captain Harrison, who had been sent from Earth itself. The talks went on for days. Found himself in the strange position of being both a participant and a bridge. He understood enough of human culture and strategy to explain human thinking to the. He understood enough of society to explain their concerns and their interests to the humans. There were moments of intense tension. The human government wanted guarantees that they would not use their superior technology to dominate human worlds. They wanted assurance that humans would not attempt to develop weapons capable of threatening space. There were arguments about trade rights, about territorial boundaries, about the sharing of scientific knowledge. But there were also moments of genuine breakthrough. It happened in the middle of the second day of negotiations. Captain Harrison was explaining human military doctrine, describing how humans trained to fight together even when they were afraid, how humans could maintain order and focus even in moments of chaos. Emperor listened to this explanation carefully. Then he said something that changed the entire direction of the conversation. "I have been thinking about what Captain Cole told me in our first private meeting. He spoke of human strength coming not from technology but from other sources. He spoke of adaptability, of creativity, of desperation that drives innovation. I have dismissed these things as irrelevant because they are not measurable by standards, but perhaps I have been looking at the measurement itself incorrectly." Lyra spoke up, "Father, what do you mean?" The Emperor considered his words carefully before speaking. "For thousands of years, we have measured strength by what we can destroy, by the power we can project, by the technology we can create. But perhaps there is another measurement of strength. Perhaps the ability to survive against overwhelming odds is more valuable than the ability to impose overwhelming force." Listen to this, understanding that something fundamental was shifting in the Emperor's thinking. "I propose," the Emperor continued, "that we form something that has never existed in history. I propose that we form a true alliance, not one based on dominance or control, but on the recognition that each side has strengths the other lacks. Humanity brings adaptability, innovation born of struggle, and the wisdom that comes from near destruction. We bring technology, knowledge accumulated over, and structures of organization and peace. Together, we would be stronger than either of us could be alone." The human representatives, speaking through communication screens from Earth, needed time to discuss this. But their response when it came back was essentially the same as the position. Humans did not want to be dominated. They wanted to be partners. It was Lyra who made the proposal that would truly change everything. She stood up in the chamber, and all eyes turned toward her. Could see that her colors were shifting rapidly, showing what seemed to be a combination of fear and determination and hope. "Father, members of the government, humans who are listening across the distance, I wish to propose something that may seem unorthodox, but I believe it is necessary for the success of any alliance between our peoples." She paused, and understood that she had planned this moment carefully. "I propose that we establish a joint council made up of both and humans, not dominion of one species over another, not a hierarchy of power or control, but genuine partnership, with both species having equal voice in decisions that affect both of us. I propose that we send delegations to one another's home worlds, that we establish not just formal governmental contact but personal contact, cultural exchange, and the building of genuine relationships between individuals." There was silence in the chamber. This was revolutionary. This was beyond what any of the governments had discussed in formal negotiations. "And most importantly," Lyra continued, "I propose that this alliance be sealed by something more than documents and signatures. I propose that it be sealed by personal commitment, by the willingness of individuals to stand together, to trust one another, and to build something new from the trust that two people have found with one another." She looked directly at. Everyone in the chamber understood what she was saying. The Emperor looked at his daughter with what seemed to be a mixture of anger and pride. "You are speaking of yourself and the human captain, I presume." "Yes, father," Lyra said simply. "I am speaking of and myself. I have spent days in conversation with him. I have looked into his eyes and seen a being capable of truth and kindness. I have found in him someone worth building a future with, and I believe that if the Emperor of the Empire can accept this union, then our peoples can learn to accept one another." Emperor rose from his chair. He walked around the table and stood before his daughter, and the moment stretched, filled with tension and possibility. "When I first learned that you had brought this human aboard without my permission, I was angry," the Emperor said slowly. "I believed you had made a mistake, that you had been fooled by someone interested only in gaining advantage for his people. But in these negotiations, I have learned that you were right. You saw something in this human that I could not see from a distance." He turned too. "You have shown yourself to be worthy of my respect, Captain Cole. You have shown yourself to be worthy of my daughter's trust. And if you are willing to commit to building something between our peoples, then I am willing to do the same." The Emperor extended his hand, stood and took it. "Then let us seal this alliance," said loudly, so that all who were present could hear. "Let us formalize a partnership between the Empire and humanity. Let us build something that history has never seen before, and let us do it with the understanding that this partnership begins with the commitment of a princess and a captain to something greater than themselves." In that moment, understood that the future had truly changed. The negotiations had been about governments and technology and power, but the real change came from individuals deciding that another being, no matter how alien, was worth believing in. That understanding would change everything. The space station orbited between Earth and the Moon, neutral territory that belonged to neither the human government nor the Empire. It was a small station, designed primarily for scientific research, but it had been chosen for this moment because of that very simplicity. No show of force, no display of military might, just a place where two species could gather to sign documents that would reshape civilization itself. Cole stood in his dress uniform, the formal military clothes that humans wore for important ceremonies. Around him, delegations from every major human government had gathered. Scientists, military leaders, politicians, and even some ordinary citizens chosen to represent the hopes of their people. But his attention was on Lyra. She emerged from the docking port where the shuttle had arrived. She wore something that might have been clothing, though it seemed less like something put on and more like a natural extension of her body. The material shimmered with the same colors that moved beneath her skin, creating an effect that was both beautiful and absolutely alien. She moved toward with that flowing gait that he had come to love. Around her, the delegation moved in careful order but barely noticed them. His entire focus was on her. When she reached him, her colors brightened to that particular shade he had learned meant joy. "Hello," she said softly. "Hello, Lyra," he replied. The ceremony began in the station's main chamber. Lyra's father, Emperor, stood with a document in his hands. The document was written in both and human language, though the translation had taken weeks to accomplish correctly. Every word had been debated, every phrase had been questioned, because this document mattered. It would bind two species together in ways that had never been done before. "We, the government of the Empire," Emperor read, his strange voice filling the chamber, "and we, the governments of humanity, do hereby recognize each other as equals. We commit to peace between our peoples. We commit to the exchange of knowledge and culture. We commit to the building of trade and friendship that will benefit both species. We do this not out of fear or necessity, but out of the understanding that together we are stronger, and that the diversity of two worlds working together creates possibilities that neither world could achieve alone." A human representative, the Secretary General of the United Earth Council, stepped forward. She was a woman named, and she had been chosen because she represented the hope and the fear that all of humanity carried into this moment. "We, the people of humanity," she said, her voice steady and strong, "welcome this alliance. We recognize the strength and the wisdom of the people. We pledge to honor this agreement and to build something new with you. We pledge that our children will grow up in a world where the divisions between our species become connections instead. And we pledge to always remember that peace comes not from fear of power, but from recognition of worth in one another." Watched as they signed the documents. The ceremony was simple, but the weight of the moment was immense. In that single act, the future of human civilization was being rewritten. After the official ceremony ended, found himself alone with Lyra on an observation deck. The station had windows that looked out into space, and beyond those windows, the vast emptiness of the universe stretched out in all directions. Earth hung nearby, a blue marble that had never imagined this moment was possible. "It is remarkable," Lyra said, looking at the planet below. "I have studied this world from distance, read about it, seen recordings. But looking at it with you, understanding that billions of humans live there, that it is your home and your history, makes it real in a way that data cannot." Stood beside her, their shoulders nearly touching. "I keep thinking about what happens now. In a few hours I will return to Earth. You will probably return to the space. It could be months before we see each other again." Lyra's colors dimmed slightly. "Yes. My father has already begun planning delegations and exchanges. We will be apart for a time, but we will see each other again. And next time, when we do, our peoples will be building a future together. The distance between us will not be as great as it was before." Reached out and took her hand. The gesture had become familiar now, comfortable. "I am afraid of something, though I do not want to admit it." "Tell me," Lyra said simply. "I am afraid that when you are back among your own people, you will begin to doubt. You will wonder if what we shared was real or just something created by unusual circumstances. You will decide that I am too human, too limited, too fragile to matter in your world." Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled his hand up to her chest, placed it where he could feel the pulse of her heart or the equivalent. "Feel that rhythm, that continuation of life, that sign of existence. That is why I will not doubt, because you are real to me in the most fundamental way. You are alive and you matter, and that matters more than the distance between us." Felt the steady pulse beneath his hand. "What happens between us, Lyra? What is this thing we have created?" "I do not know," she admitted, "but I know that I do not want to live without it. My people have a saying that I have been thinking about since we met. It says that beauty is not what you see with your eyes, but what you recognize in another being. When I asked you if I was beautiful, I was not really asking about my appearance. I was asking if you could see past my alien form and recognize something of value beneath." "And I do see that," said. "I know," Lyra replied. "That is why you are beautiful to me, Cole. Because you looked at something completely unknown to you, something that could have been threatening or terrible, and you chose to see beauty and worth instead. That takes a kind of courage that my people have almost forgotten how to demonstrate." Pulled her close. The gesture was awkward because their bodies were not designed for human embraces, but Lyra adjusted, folding her form in a way that fit against him. Her skin was warm, and her colors shifted to match the soft glow of the observation lights. Below them, Earth continued its rotation. In the colonies and cities below, humans were going about their lives, unaware that the greatest change in human history had just been set in motion. In the space, their people were preparing for the same transformation. But Lyra knew something that the rest of the galaxy did not know yet. They knew that peace did not come from treaties or documents or formal agreements. Peace came from individuals deciding to see value in one another. Peace came from choosing to believe in the possibility of connection, even when that connection seemed impossible. "What will we do now?" Lyra asked. Looked down at the woman, the alien princess who had asked him if she was beautiful, and changed his life with a simple question. "Now," he said, "we help our peoples build a future worthy of the sacrifice both of us have made to get here. We show them that alliance is possible. We prove to the galaxy that understanding is stronger than dominance, that peace is stronger than fear, and that the most powerful force in the universe is the ability of one being to truly see another." Lyra's colors brightened to that brilliant shade of joy. "I love you," she said, using a human word that her people had translated from their own language. "That is something I did not think would be possible when I asked that question. That is something I did not believe the universe would allow." "I love you too," said simply. And below them, Earth turned in the starlight, carrying with it the hope of a new age, where humans would walk together toward a future that neither species had imagined possible, built on the foundation of truth, honesty, and the recognition of beauty in one another. The universe had changed, not with explosions or conquest or displays of power. It had changed with a simple conversation between two beings willing to see worth in one another, and that perhaps was the greatest power of all.